In the quiet spaces between city lights and silence, in the forgotten corners of Asia's concrete sprawl, some spirits still linger. This is Ghosts of Asia, where modern life meets ancient dread, where the dead are not buried deep enough, and the rituals that once kept them at rest are long abandoned. We bring you true horror, not of blood and monsters, but of spirits that whisper through elevator vents, appear in mirrored glass, and follow you home when you're most alone. Tonight's tale comes from a crumbling apartment in Tokyo's shadow, a building with too many secrets, an elevator with one forbidden rule: never ride it after 11:11 p.m. And if it stops between floors, do not speak, and never, ever look into the mirror. You may not believe in ghosts, but in Japan, some buildings do. Welcome to The Elevator Only Stops When You're Alone. Let's begin.
Tokyo never really sleeps. Even in Toshima, where the high-rises look tired and the vending machines hum like lullabies for the lonely, there's always a dull echo of tires on asphalt, of trains disappearing into tunnels, of someone's television bleeding through paper-thin walls. Kenta Matsuda moved into room 705 on a Tuesday afternoon. He carried 3 boxes and a suitcase up from the taxi himself. The moving truck was delayed, or maybe he had delayed it. He couldn't remember anymore. After all, it wasn't like anyone was waiting for him to settle in. The apartment was small, dated, and smelled faintly of tatami that had seen too many summers. A narrow balcony overlooked a back alley choked with utility wires. The kitchen faucet dripped. The walls were beige, almost the color of regret. But it was cheap and it was empty. That was enough. Kenta was 31. He worked as an IT consultant for a mid-sized firm that only cared if he hit deadlines, not where he lived. After the breakup, he'd taken his boss's offer to work remote as long as you want, and vanished from his Shibuya shared apartment within 3 days. No more roommates. No more fighting over laundry. No more finding her toothbrush still in the cup by accident. This building in Toshima was old. Built in the late 80s maybe. The kind of place that once held dreams, but now held silence. Its corridors were narrow and dim, lined with muted gray wallpaper that had yellowed in the corners. Most tenants kept to themselves. He passed 2 on the way in. A woman in her 50s wearing socks with sandals who bowed slightly without meeting his eyes, and a teenage boy with bleached hair who said nothing at all. When Kenta reached the 7th floor for the first time, the elevator made a strange noise, a brief thunk like metal catching on itself. But the doors opened fine. He stepped out into the hallway, and for a moment he felt watched. Not by someone, by the building. Room 705 was at the far end, across from a dusty emergency exit sign that flickered every few seconds. The key turned too easily. The door opened with a dry creak. And just like that, he had arrived. The first night passed quietly. He sat on the floor, scrolling through emails with one hand and drinking canned beer with the other. His desk and chair hadn't arrived yet. Neither had his monitor, so he lay on his side, laptop propped against a pillow, the glow of the screen painting ghostly shadows on the walls. There was no signal for his Bluetooth speaker. He'd forgotten to bring incense. Even YouTube ads felt intrusive in the silence. At 2:13 a.m., the refrigerator hummed to life and startled him. That was the loudest sound he heard all night. The second night, he rode the elevator down to the ground floor to get noodles from the nearby konbini. It was past midnight. When the elevator opened at the lobby, he noticed something odd. There was a mirror inside the elevator. He hadn't seen it before. It stretched from knee to ceiling, framed by brass that had dulled with age. Kenta stepped in, holding his basket of microwave meals. The doors closed, and the mirror showed his reflection clearly. Hair slightly disheveled, eyes sunken from sleep debt. But as the elevator climbed, he thought he saw something flicker behind him. Not a person, not a shape, just something. He turned around. There was nothing. He exhaled, chuckled at himself, and muttered, Maybe I need to cut back on caffeine. On the fourth night, his packages finally arrived. He set up his work desk and plugged in his dual monitors. He answered Slack messages. He rescheduled 3 Zoom meetings. He sent off a progress report. The glow of the monitors made the room feel more alive. But something had shifted. When he opened the window that night, the air smelled faintly of incense. Old incense, like the kind you burn for the dead. But no one was on the balcony, no one below, no sign of a festival or a nearby shrine. Still, it lingered, soft and bitter, like memory. The fifth night is when everything changed. It was 11:08 p.m. Kenta had just returned from a vending machine run. He was carrying a hot can of milk tea in one hand, phone in the other, half scrolling, half watching the floor numbers blink above the elevator door. 1, 2, 3. The elevator was empty. 4, 5, 6. Then, suddenly, the panel blinked. All numbers disappeared. For a moment, the elevator jerked, not up or down, but like it had paused in midair. A faint ding, and then, on the digital display, a number appeared. Chi 6 minus. Not 6, not 7, just 6 minus. The doors opened. A hallway stretched before him, dark and silent, not like the rest of the building. This one was lit only by a single flickering bulb far down the left end. No windows, no signs, just a faint, damp smell, like mildew, old wood, and something burnt. He didn't move. His milk tea was cooling in his hand. The doors remained open. He leaned out slightly. His phone still had signal. But when he opened the camera to record, the screen stayed black. Completely black. No static, no glitches, just void. He backed away. The doors began to close. In the mirror, behind him, there was someone standing. A blurry shape, shoulder height, not moving. Too close, far too close. He spun around. Empty. Just the corner. Just his own breath caught in his throat. When he turned back, the mirror was clean. Only one reflection stared back. But now, his hands were shaking. Back in room 705, Kenta locked the door and turned on every light. He placed a cup of water beside the entrance. He wasn't even sure why. He had read somewhere that spirits don't like water offerings being placed without prayer. Still, he did it. He didn't sleep that night. Not because of fear, but because every time he closed his eyes, he thought he heard the elevator dinging from down the hall. By morning, he told himself it had to be stress. He had been working too much, living alone, eating badly, letting his mind spiral. Still, when he checked the elevator panel the next day, there was no button for 6-, just the regular floors, 1 through 7. He pressed every button, tried the emergency line, asked the security guard in the lobby, "Kai 6-." The man frowned, shook his head. "There's no such floor." He turned away. Later that day, on a break between meetings, Kenta found himself searching online. Not for building plans, not for ghost stories, but for rumors. He typed, "Toshima elevator doesn't stop on real floors." Then, "elevator mirror ghost Tokyo." And finally, Kai 6-. One result caught his eye. A thread buried deep in a Japanese forum, forgotten, dusty, archived. The title read, "Toshi Densen, Why Bitter no Elebeta ni Hitori de Noranai? Don't ride alone in the elevator at Building Y." And beneath it, a comment with 3 rules. Don't ride after 11:11 p.m. If it stops on 6-, don't get out. Never, ever look into the mirror. Kenta leaned back in his chair. The hairs on his neck stood on end, because last night he had broken 2 of the 3 rules, and the third, he had no choice but to break it every time he rode the elevator.
Kenta woke up at noon the next day, groggy and sweat-drenched. He had no memory of falling asleep, only a dream, or maybe the memory of a dream, where the elevator kept opening and closing in the dark. Each time, it was a different hallway. Each time, someone else was reflected in the mirror behind him. He never saw their face, but they were always closer than before. His inbox was full. 3 Slack pings, 1 missed Zoom call, a project brief labeled urgent in all caps. He replied to none of them. Instead, he sat on the floor beside his laptop and typed deliberately into the search bar, "Elevator Ghost, Tokyo." At first, the results were typical. Clickbait headlines, paranormal YouTube thumbnails with red circles and screaming fonts. But none mentioned a floor labeled 6-. None mentioned mirrors. He tried again. "Toshi Densetsu, elevator, Hitori." Urban legend, elevator, alone. This time, a few older forums appeared. Japanese ones, obscure, mostly dead. He clicked on a link buried beneath several layers of translated threads, an archived post from 2014 titled, "Personal Experience. Do not ride the elevator in Building Y after 11 p.m." The username was deleted. No profile picture, no replies. Just one long paragraph, poorly punctuated, rambling like a confession. Kenta copied it into Google Translate, then slowly read, "If you ride alone after 11:15 p.m., the elevator stops on a floor that doesn't exist. The panel shows Kai 6-, but there is no such hallway in the building plan. Don't get off, even if the doors open, even if you hear crying. If you speak, she hears you, and if you look into the mirror, she sees you." He froze. The air in the apartment felt heavier. He opened the window. Outside, the alley was quiet. He looked back at the post. She was left behind when the shrine was destroyed. Her bones weren't moved. The building stands on cursed land. She only appears to those who are alone, especially the lonely ones, especially those who are already dead inside. Kenta stared at that last sentence for a long time. Especially those who are already dead inside. That evening, he skipped dinner. He kept the lights off. He sat on the floor with his back to the mirror in the corner, the same mirror he had set up for dressing in the mornings. He hadn't looked into it since the elevator ride. Instead, he opened a new tab, typed Kai 6-Spirit, Tokyo, Building Y. Nothing concrete, but one post on an old Reddit thread caught his eye, posted 3 years ago. Just one sentence. The woman in the mirror doesn't follow you home unless you speak to her. No replies, no likes, no context, but Kenta felt his stomach twist, because he remembered clearly now, on that first night when the elevator stopped between floors, when he backed away and turned to the mirror, he had whispered something without realizing. Maybe I need to cut back on caffeine. 6 words, spoken aloud, inside the elevator, after 11 p.m., with the mirror behind him. He scrolled further down the Reddit thread. A user named Smoky Tanuki 84 had posted a crude drawing of a building floor plan. Kenta stared. It looked uncannily like his building. Same elevator shaft, same narrow corridors, but between floors 6 and 7, someone had drawn a faint rectangle with a question mark inside. A comment read, "There used to be an emergency service hallway between 6 and 7. It was sealed decades ago. Now it's just empty space. Technically doesn't exist anymore, but sometimes elevators still pause there, like the shaft remembers." The phrase stuck with him. The shaft remembers. Later that night, as he boiled instant noodles in silence, he noticed his phone screen had dimmed. He tapped it. Nothing. It wasn't dead, just frozen. He hard rebooted. The logo came up, but the screen remained dark. He placed the phone face down and sat at the table, spooning tasteless noodles into his mouth. He glanced at the microwave clock. 11:08 p.m. 3 minutes until the cursed hour. Without thinking, he turned off the lights and walked to the door, slipped on his sandals, stepped into the hallway, and pressed the elevator button. The hallway was still, not silent. There was always the low hum of Tokyo in the walls, but it felt muted, compressed. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime. Inside, the mirror waited. Kenta stepped in. This time, he didn't press a floor, just stood, watching the panel. 1, 2, 3. Nothing strange, not yet. 4, 5, 6. The elevator slowed. Ding. Kai 6-. The panel blinked. The doors began to open. This time, Kenta didn't move. He held his breath. The hallway beyond was the same as before, long, dim, shadowed. The faint smell of old incense floated in, curling like smoke that never burned. He stared into the mirror. Behind him, nothing. Then, a flicker.
a soft blip across the reflection, like static on an old TV screen. He turned around. Still no one there. But in the mirror, something lingered. The faint suggestion of a woman's silhouette, but too thin, too crooked, as if her bones had been folded in on themselves. Then the panel blinked again, the doors closed, the elevator resumed its climb to floor 7. Kenta stumbled out, heart racing. He pressed his back to the hallway wall and looked down both ends. Everything looked normal. But when he turned around to press the button and send the elevator back down, the mirror inside was fogged, like someone had breathed on it from within. And at the center of the fog, drawn by an unseen finger, was a single character. She. Death. Back in room 705, Kenta checked his phone again. The screen worked now, but when he opened the camera roll, he found a new video. He hadn't taken anything since the move, but there it was, a 4-minute clip. No thumbnail, just black. He tapped it. The audio played first, his own breathing, then faint elevator music, and then his voice, not loud, not scared, just whispering. She followed me home. The screen remained black until the final second, when it flipped upside down, showing a frame of the elevator mirror. There were 2 figures inside. Only one had a face. The next morning, Kenta didn't open his laptop. He didn't check his work messages. He didn't reply to the 3 missed calls from his manager. Instead, he sat on the tatami floor of room 705, knees pulled to his chest, staring at the wall across from him. On that wall hung nothing, no mirror, no art, just the faint outline of where something used to be, a square of cleaner paint, surrounded by yellow dust. His eyes kept drifting toward it, because last night, in his dream, or maybe in the last second of that footage, he saw a woman standing there, just standing, head lowered, hair drenched, fingernails black. And behind her, etched into the wall in dripping black strokes, was the same character from the mirror. She. Death. He tried to distract himself, made coffee, opened the window, checked the hallway through the pee-hole 3 times. Nothing unusual. But when he stepped out to drop off his trash, something had changed. The elevator doors were open, not moving, just sitting there, waiting. The panel was blank, no lights, no buttons. And inside, the mirror had been removed. Kenta froze. It wasn't shattered. There were no shards, just an empty, exposed steel wall with faint rectangular dust marks where the mirror had once been bolted. He took a cautious step forward. The air inside the elevator was colder than the hallway, not by much, but enough to feel it on his skin. He reached out, almost against his will, and touched the back wall. Cold, dry, no mirror, no reflection. Then he noticed something else. In the far upper corner of the elevator, just above where the mirror had been, there was a single tiny sticker, half peeled away from the wall. It looked old, faded. He leaned closer. It read, "Do not remove. Sacred boundary. Sacred boundary. A seal? Kenta recoiled, breath catching in his chest. Who had removed the mirror? He ran to the front desk. The security guard on shift was different, older, half asleep, sipping instant coffee. Kenta explained about the missing mirror. The man blinked slowly and said, "Mirror?" Kenta pointed toward the elevator. The guard shrugged. There hasn't been a mirror in that elevator for years. That wasn't possible. Kenta had looked into it multiple times. He remembered his own reflection. He remembered the figure behind him. He remembered the character drawn in fog. She. But the guard only gave him a confused look and said again, "You must be thinking of a different building." Back upstairs, Kenta stood in front of the elevator again. The doors were still open, the panel still blank. No movement, no sound. He stepped back and took the stairs instead. From now on, he decided, he would never use the elevator again. But the curse, it seemed, didn't need the elevator anymore. That night, he heard the footsteps, not above, not below, inside his room. It started at 11:11 p.m. sharp, a soft, dragging shuffle, like someone with bare feet moving slowly across tatami. But room 705 was one-room studio. There was no hallway, nowhere to walk. Still, the steps moved. From the kitchen, to the balcony, to the bathroom. He held his breath, curled beneath the futon. Then silence. Until, click, the fridge door opened. He froze, heart pounding in his ears. Very slowly, he sat up. The room was pitch black. He hadn't turned off the lights, but they were off. All of them. He grabbed his phone. The flashlight flickered to life. He stepped cautiously toward the kitchen. The fridge door was slightly ajar. Cold air spilled out like mist. He reached out and opened it fully. Inside was a small wooden statue soaked with water. No food, no cans, just the statue. It was carved in the shape of a kneeling woman, head bowed low, hands together in prayer. There were burn marks along the base, and beside it a slip of yellowed paper, torn and faded. On it, written in old brush calligraphy, were the words, "I will not ride alone again." Kenta stumbled back, dropped his phone. The light hit the floor. In the corner of the room, near the mirror he had covered with a towel, he heard breathing. Not his own. Shallow. Wheezing. Wet. He grabbed the towel and yanked it down. The mirror was still there, but something was wrong with the reflection. He was alone in the room, he could feel that, but in the reflection there were two shadows, his and one standing directly behind him. He didn't turn around. He couldn't. He lifted the towel again, covered the mirror, waited. The next day, Kenta didn't leave his apartment. He turned off his phone, unplugged his router, covered every reflective surface with cloth, his laptop screen, his microwave door, the stainless sink. He even hung a blanket over the TV. But as dusk settled in, the room began to change. The shadows moved strangely. The air grew humid, like a bathroom after a hot shower. And the incense smell returned, heavier now, almost choking. He sat on the floor and cried quietly into his hands. Not out of fear, not yet. Out of the overwhelming sense that whatever this was, it knew him, knew he was alone, knew he was running from something and had been long before he ever moved into this cursed place. At 11:10 p.m., he lit the only candle he had, a birthday candle found in the back of a drawer. The flame flickered wildly, though the air was still. He stared at the closed door to his apartment. Then he heard it again. Ding! Not outside. Inside. The soft chime of the elevator. But he wasn't near it. He stood slowly. The door to his closet was open now. He hadn't opened it. And inside was the mirror. The elevator mirror, bolted to the back wall as if it had always been part of the apartment. In its reflection, he saw himself, and behind him, the door to room 705, slowly opening. Kenta didn't remember falling asleep. When he opened his eyes, the candle had burned down to a nub, leaving a pool of wax hardened on the tatami. The room was dim again. Morning had come, but the light through the curtains was pale and gray, like it had passed through too many clouds to be real. For a moment, he thought maybe it had all been a dream. The mirror in the closet, the statue in the fridge, the slip of paper. Then he stood up and stepped on something. He looked down. It was the yellowed note, still damp, still marked with the faint smell of smoke and rain. I will not ride alone again. He hadn't put it there. Kenta needed answers, or at least someone to tell him he wasn't losing his mind. He took the stairs down this time, 2 at a time, heart pounding. The lobby was quiet. The security guard was gone, no replacement yet. He paced in front of the elevator, waiting for a tenant to appear. Someone, anyone. After several minutes, the door to apartment 703 creaked open. An elderly woman stepped out, small, stooped, wearing a faded purple sweater and indoor slippers, her white hair tied neatly in a low bun. She locked her door slowly, then turned toward the elevator. Kenta approached her gently. Sumimasen, excuse me, may I ask, how long have you lived here? The woman didn't look up at first. Then, after a long pause, she gave a small bow. Since it was built, 33 years. Her voice was thin, like paper. Kenta hesitated, then asked the question that had been clawing at him since the first night. Have you ever heard about a floor between the 6th and 7th? The woman's eyes didn't widen. She didn't gasp or flinch. She just sighed, softly, like someone recalling something too old and too sad to speak aloud. You saw her, didn't you? Kenta didn't answer. He didn't have to. The woman nodded once, then turned and walked toward the elevator. She didn't press the button. Instead, she leaned close to the closed doors, as if speaking to someone on the other side. Still lonely, aren't you? Kenta felt a chill climb his spine. The woman turned back to him. This building was built over a shrine long ago. Before the city swallowed the trees, there was a clearing here, a small altar, no name, no records. Just a woman who died waiting for her family to return. They never did.
Kenta swallowed. A shrine? She nodded. The developers bulldozed it. They found bones during construction, said they were animal, but we knew better. No ceremony, no relocation, no apology. Now she rides with the lonely. Back in his apartment, Kenta sat on the floor again, staring at the ceiling. She rides with the lonely. Those words echoed like static behind his eyes. He thought of the Reddit post, the mirror, the statue in the fridge, the slip of paper. He knew he had done no okuribibi, no ceremony to send the dead spirits back to the afterlife. He knew he hadn't burned incense for the dead since his grandmother passed 10 years ago. But something in him felt shamed, as if he had crossed a line not by defying belief, but by ignoring something sacred, something older than belief. That night, he made a plan. He would take the elevator again, but this time he wouldn't panic, he wouldn't speak, he wouldn't turn. He would ride it and watch. He wanted to see what the lonely floor truly was. 11:08 p.m. He pressed the button, waited. The elevator arrived empty. He stepped in. The mirror was still gone. He faced the blank wall, pressed no buttons. The doors closed. The elevator began to rise. 1, 2, 3. Then blink. The lights flickered. The panel went dark. Then ding. Kai. 6. The doors opened slowly, sighing as if reluctant. He stood still. The hallway was the same, silent, lit only by one dim overhead bulb. But this time, something was different. There was a door now, at the very end of the corridor, wooden, rotting, half open. Kenta stepped forward, one foot into the hallway, then the other. He didn't speak. He didn't look back. He walked slowly toward the door, the sound of his own breathing filling the void. As he approached, he saw that the door was slightly ajar, swaying gently. Beyond it, darkness. But not empty. There was a sound. Low, continuous, a woman's voice, not crying, not whispering, humming, a lullaby, off-key, slow, wavering like wind through rusted chimes. He stopped just outside the doorway. The humming grew louder. Then sudden silence, and a single word, spoken from within the dark, soft, breathy, like exhale on glass. Alone. Kenta's heart stopped. He stepped back. The floor creaked beneath him, not his own step. From behind, he turned, and the hallway was empty. The doors of the elevator were closed. No mirror, no lights, nothing but shadow. Then, from inside the room, "You came back." He ran, not back through the hallway, but into the door, into the darkness. He had no choice. If she had followed him into his home, if she had drawn on his mirror, if she had whispered through his vents, then perhaps facing her here, on her floor, on her silence, would set him free. The darkness inside the room was thick, wet. It clung to his skin like fog. He couldn't see walls, couldn't see floor,
Only one thing glowed dimly at the center: a mirror, framed in soot, cracked, and in its surface, his own reflection, alone, until slowly, behind him, a hand emerged, thin, bone-like, grasping his shoulder. He screamed. The mirror shattered. He fell backward, and woke up on the elevator floor, sweat-soaked, breath ragged. The doors were open. He was on 7, as if nothing had happened. But when he turned to look at the panel, for a split second, it read 6, then blinked back to normal. He didn't sleep that night, because when he got back to room 705, the mirror on his wall was cracked, and in the corner of the glass, written in fog, "Not alone anymore." Kenta covered the mirror. He didn't think. He didn't breathe. He ripped an old bedsheet from the closet and threw it over the fractured glass like it was a corpse. The sound of it falling was muffled, but not enough to hide the sound that came just after. A whisper, not from outside, not from the hallway, but from the mirror itself. "You looked." Just 2 words, soft, final. That night, Kenta dreamed of reflections. He was standing in the elevator again. No buttons, no light, just the dull hum of the machinery. He turned to face the mirror. This time, there were dozens of people in the reflection. Old, young, men, women, all blurred, all silent, but none were standing beside him in the real world. He reached out, touched the glass, and all at once they turned to look at him, every one of them. Eyes hollow, mouths closed. Then all at once they opened their mouths in unison. No scream, no sound, only darkness pouring out like smoke, like shadow, like sorrow. He woke up choking on air that didn't feel like his own. The next morning, Kenta left the apartment. First time in days. He needed distance. The hallway was quiet, but he didn't trust the elevator, not anymore. He took the stairs, all 7 flights. His knees ached, his lungs burned. He stepped outside and breathed in Tokyo air like it might cleanse him. But the world didn't care. The city didn't stop. The sky was overcast. The streets were full of people staring into phones, into windows, into themselves. No one else knew what floor 6 was. No one else knew about the mirror. No one else had seen her. At a small temple tucked between 2 apartment blocks, Kenta found a priest. He didn't ask for a ritual, didn't ask for a blessing. He just sat quietly on a stone bench beneath a maple tree and waited. Eventually the priest approached, old, silent, eyes kind. Kenta didn't know what to say, so he asked the only question that mattered. "Do mirrors trap spirits?" The priest nodded slowly. "They do not trap them. They reflect what is already there." Kenta swallowed hard. What if you see something that isn't supposed to be? The priest looked up at the sky. "Then you brought it with you." He didn't take the elevator home. He didn't go home at all. Instead, he walked the alleys of Toshima until his legs gave out, found a manga cafe with private booths, paid for 8 hours, locked himself in. The small room smelled of instant ramen and stale air, but it was quiet, safe. There was no mirror. He opened his laptop, connected to the cafe Wi-Fi, and typed, "Japan, mirror, spirit, rules." One result stood out. A list, old, scanned from a book printed before the war. At the top, Kagami no Kiyome, the purity of the mirror. And beneath it, in delicate script, 1. Never speak into a mirror after sundown. 2. Never let a cracked mirror remain in the home. 3. Never place a mirror opposite a doorway. It may invite things in. 4. If you see another version of yourself blink out of time, do not speak. 5. If a second face appears beside yours and no one is there, you must leave immediately. Kenta's hands trembled. He had broken them all. Back at the apartment building, the front door was ajar. He hadn't left it that way. He stepped in cautiously. The air inside was cold. Not just from the AC, which he had unplugged the day before, but unnaturally cold, bone deep. The bedsheet had fallen from the mirror. He stared at it from the threshold, not daring to step closer. In the reflection, he saw the apartment. Normal, empty. But he noticed something. The reflection of the clock on the wall. In real life, it read 3:42 p.m. But in the mirror, it read 11:11. Kenta backed out of the room, out of the apartment, down the hall. The elevator was open again, waiting. He turned to leave, to take the stairs again, but the hallway behind him changed. Suddenly, it wasn't his floor anymore. The wallpaper was darker, the lights dimmer. The air smelled of mildew and incense. He turned back to the elevator. The panel glitched. 6. Ding. He stepped in. The mirror was back, clean, whole. He saw himself, and he saw the woman, directly behind him, close enough to feel her breath. He didn't turn around, didn't speak, just looked straight ahead and whispered to the glass, "I'm sorry." Her eyes in the mirror blinked once. Then the lights flickered. The doors opened. This time the hallway outside was different. Not decayed. New. Clean white walls. Soft light. Wooden floors. A hallway from the past. And at the far end, a shrine. Small. Crumbling. But still standing. With incense burning. Fresh. Waiting. He stepped out, walked down the hallway, stopped in front of the shrine, and saw her. Kneeling before it, hair hanging like wet ropes. She turned. No face, just darkness where features should be. Kenta dropped to his knees, and for the first time, he prayed, not with words, but with silence, with presence, with grief. And when he looked up, she was gone. Only the shrine remained, and the sound of the elevator door closing softly behind him.
The next morning, Kenta stood outside the building with an unlit stick of incense in his hand. He didn't know why. It was just something the old priest had said. When the dead are forgotten, they knock. There was no shrine in the courtyard, no altar tucked beside the garbage bins or beneath the vending machines. Only blank concrete, cigarette butts, and the sound of cicadas screaming into the late summer heat. He lit the incense anyway, held it in both hands, and bowed once. The smoke curled upward, defiant against the city air. The old woman from room 703 was feeding stray cats by the side of the building. She wore the same lavender sweater, now pilled and faded like a memory. When she saw Kenta, she nodded, then gestured for him to sit. He did. Neither of them spoke for a while. A cat rubbed against his knee. Another stared at him with unsettling stillness, as if recognizing him. Finally, she said, "You've seen the old floor." Kenta nodded. "I saw her shrine, I think." The woman smiled sadly. "Not many remember, but it was there, long ago, before all this concrete." She gestured around them, at the gray walls, the electric lines, the buzz of neon overhead. There was a forest here, just a small patch of sacred ground. No Tory gate, no name. Just a woman who lived alone in a small hut beside a cedar tree. Kenta listened, breath caught. She took care of children, lost ones, sick ones, the ones mothers left behind. People called her Obasan, like me, but they feared her too, said she knew the old ways, said she spoke with spirits. Then one year, the government came, cleared the land, built the station, then the apartments. They told her to leave. Kenta leaned forward. Did she? The woman shook her head slowly. She sat in front of her hut and refused, said she would not abandon the children who still needed her. That was the last time anyone saw her alive. The developers cleared the lot 3 weeks later. No records of a death, no permits for exorcism, just a quiet demolition. And when they dug the foundation, the workers found bones. Some said they were animal, wild dogs. Others whispered the truth, that they'd crushed the last shrine of an old spirit woman. But the city moves fast. Buildings went up. People moved in. No one asked questions. Except those who live on the top floors. They always hear things. Kenta asked the woman why she had stayed. I was a girl when this building opened. My family lived here first, room 703. We heard her before we ever saw her. Whispers in the vent, a woman crying, an old lullaby sung to no one. But we never looked, never spoke. We left offerings every obon, burned incense, left rice by the elevator. And she left us alone. Kenta lowered his eyes. But now she's not alone. The woman looked at him sharply. What do you mean? I mean, she comes into my apartment now, not just the elevator. The woman's hands trembled. She placed the bag of cat food down. You let her in. That night, Kenta bought incense, real incense, thick, black sticks used in Buddhist temples. He bought white rice and a small ceramic dish. He bought water, salt, and a single flower. He cleared a space in his apartment by the front door. And there, with shaking hands, he built a shrine. Not because he believed, but because he had no choice. At 11 p.m., he lit the incense, poured the water, placed the flower. Then he kneeled and bowed once. "I'm sorry for forgetting, for seeing you, for not understanding." The smoke curled upward. For a moment, everything was still. Then, the candle blew out. No wind, just extinguished. And in that moment of darkness, he felt something brush past him. Not violent, not angry, just cold, just sad. He didn't sleep that night, but the air felt lighter. The mirror remained covered, the elevator silent. For once, he felt untouched. The next morning, someone knocked on his door. He opened it cautiously. It was a man in a suit, 30-something, hair slicked back, and clipboard in hand. "Building management," the man said. "We're replacing all hallway panels and mirrors this week." Kenta froze. "Mirrors?" The man nodded. "The old elevator mirrors were removed due to safety complaints, cracks, warping. We're installing new ones." "Don't..." The man laughed lightly. "Excuse me?" "Don't put up a mirror. It's building regulation. Please." But the man was already walking away. And when Kenta stepped into the hallway, he saw a worker screwing a brand new spotless mirror into the elevator wall. His reflection looked back at him. Alone. But not empty. Because over his shoulder, in the reflection only, a hand was reaching out.
Tokyo had always hummed, a low, constant murmur, traffic and trains, vending machines and wind. But now, for Kenta, the noise wasn't outside. It was inside. Inside the walls, inside the floor, inside his chest. The silence of room 705 was no longer peaceful. It was dense, waiting, watching. He hadn't slept in 3 nights. Not fully, not deeply. Each time he closed his eyes, something would pull him back, a whisper in the hallway, a flicker in the corner of his eye, or the click of his fridge door swinging open by itself. He was unraveling. Unwashed dishes piled up. His plants had withered. His inbox was full of unread emails. Work had stopped calling. Even his mother's line messages had gone unanswered. The last one simply read, "Ken-chan, are you okay?" He didn't respond, because he didn't know how to explain that the building was breathing. On the 4th night, he finally broke. He stood in front of the elevator at 2 a.m., barefoot, wearing only a t-shirt and boxers. The elevator was cold. He hadn't brought his phone. He pressed the call button. The elevator opened immediately. Too immediately. Inside, the new mirror gleamed. Untouched. Perfect. He stepped in, didn't press a button. The doors closed. The panel blinked. And without instruction, the elevator began to move. Up. Past 7. Past logic. Ding. Kairoku. The doors slid open. But this time, it wasn't a hallway. It was a room. His room. Room 705. But older. The walls were stained. The tatami was torn. The window was cracked open. and through it he could hear waves. The ocean. He hadn't heard the sea in years. There was something standing near the futon. A shape, tall, unmoving. Not a woman this time. A man. Pale, dressed in white funeral robes, face wrapped in gauze. Kenta didn't move. The man didn't either. And then the mirror behind them, the mirror inside the elevator, shattered from within. The glass cracked in a slow ripple like ice breaking on a lake. Kenta stepped back. The elevator doors slammed shut. The panel flickered violently, then went blank. The lights turned off. He screamed, pounded on the doors, felt his throat go raw. Then, a soft chime. The doors opened to the 7th floor. Back to normal. Bright lights, gray wallpaper, silence. But when he stepped out, something followed him. He could feel it. The smell of wet wood, of old rice left too long in the offering bowl, of ashes not properly swept. In his apartment, he found everything exactly as he had left it, except the mirror. It had returned, uncovered, whole, and in its reflection, he was no longer alone. There was a woman now, standing by the bathroom door, not behind him, just there, looking at him, eyes too dark, too empty. He turned, nothing. Turned back, she was closer. Kenta laughed, just once, a sharp, broken sound. He took the nearest chair and smashed the mirror. Shards scattered across the floor. He breathed. Finally. Silence. But then, a knock from inside the bathroom. Just once. Soft. Measured. Like a question. He stood frozen for what felt like years. Then, walked forward, each step an act of betrayal against his instincts. He opened the bathroom door. Empty. Only the mirror above the sink. Unbroken. And in it, the reflection of the living room, where the woman now stood, back turned, waiting. That night, Kenta didn't sleep. He sat in the corner of the room, all the lights on, gripping a lighter and a stick of incense in one hand. Every hour he relit it, until dawn came, pale and gray, the light no longer comforting, only revealing. The woman was still in the reflection, and she was now facing him. He left the building that morning, walked without aim, past coffee shops, past people smiling into phones, past lives that were still untouched. He ended up in Une Park beneath the weeping cherry trees. Children laughed nearby, tourists took selfies, and he cried for the first time in years. Because he realized something horrible. She didn't just haunt buildings. She haunted people. Kenta didn't plan to return to the building that night. He told himself he wouldn't. He sat in a cafe until it closed, wandered department store aisles like a ghost, even rode the Yamanote line in circles, hour after hour, pretending to be part of the living world. But the city has a way of pulling you back, a gravity stronger than reason. And at 10:52 p.m., Kenta found himself outside the entrance to his apartment once again. He stood there for a long time. The lights in the lobby flickered. Not a warning, a welcome. He stepped inside. The hallway was too quiet. The kind of silence that doesn't feel peaceful, but expectant. Room 705 waited at the end. Its door closed, its lock unbroken. But something had changed. The number plate on the door now read 6. Not 705. 6. He blinked, wiped his eyes, looked again. Back to normal. Just his imagination. But he didn't believe that anymore. Inside, the air was cold, heavy, the way temples feel when no one else is there. He turned on the lights. Only 2 bulbs worked now. The rest had burned out. He lit incense out of habit, set it on the floor. No altar, no prayers, just survival. The clock on the microwave blinked. 11:10 p.m. 1 minute. He sat on the floor, back against a wall, clutched his knees to his chest, stared at the mirror above the sink, still unbroken, no matter how many times he'd tried. He could see himself, and just over his shoulder, movement. The digital clock hit 11:11, and the apartment changed. The air folded inward, walls pressed closer, the light dimmed to ash, and from inside the mirror, she stepped forward. Not her reflection, her, out of the glass. No sound, no scream, only the creak of her bones, the wet slap of her feet on tatami. She wore no clothes now, only skin, stretched, blistered, hanging. Her hair stuck to her face like seaweed. Her eyes were sunken, her mouth sealed shut with black thread. She did not walk, she drifted. 1 step, 2, closer. Kenta couldn't move, not because of fear, because he understood something now. She didn't want to hurt him. She wanted to be seen, to be known, to be remembered. She stopped just in front of him, tilted her head, opened her mouth. The thread tore, and with it came a sound so soft, so human, a lullaby, broken, off-key, sung to a child who had long since died. Kenta's throat closed, his eyes burned. He bowed his head and whispered, "I see you." She fell to her knees. The floor groaned beneath her. She placed her hands on the tatami, then reached for him. Her fingers touched his chest, cold, but not cruel. And for the first time she saw her face clearly. She was old, so old, wrinkled, weathered. But her eyes, they were mother's. The incense burned down to ash. The apartment blinked, and the lights returned. She was gone. Only the smoke remained. But on the mirror, a new message had appeared. Thank you. Drawn not in fog, but in dust, as if someone had cleaned a layer of time away. But Kenta knew better. It wasn't over. Because at 11:11, the boundary had opened, and once it opens, it doesn't always close. He didn't sleep. He didn't move.
He just sat, breathing. Because outside in the hallway, he could hear it now. Footsteps. Not one set. Many. Dozens. Like a crowd. All barefoot. All arriving. And then, the soft ding of the elevator. Ding. Once. Twice. Ding. And then the sound of it going up. Not stopping, not slowing, just rising. Beyond the 7th floor, past the roof, into somewhere else, and from deep inside its machinery, a woman's voice, humming.
The day after 11/11, Kenta walked through Tokyo like someone in mourning. He didn't wear black. There was no funeral, no family in grief, no body to bury. But something inside him had shifted. He had seen her, not just the ghost, not just the figure in the mirror, but her, the woman beneath the curse, the sorrow beneath the fear. And that changed everything. At a second-hand bookstore in Koenji, tucked between a used CD shop and a shuttered curry stall, Kenta found the book. It was old, bound in brown fabric, no English title, no barcode. The spine read only Ubasute. He bought it without asking questions. Back in room 705, he laid the book on his desk and flipped through it with reverence. The pages smelled of age, of burnt dust, of incense long gone out. Inside were stories, not fiction, not exactly, but recollections, fragments of oral history passed down and recorded in the quiet voices of rural Japan. He read them all. In the mountains of Nagano, they used to leave them during winter. Old women, mothers, grandmothers, carried up narrow trails on the backs of sons they had raised, wrapped in threadbare blankets, given nothing but rice and sometimes a gourd of water, left to die among the snow. It was not cruelty, one account insisted. It was survival. If she eats, we starve. If she drinks, we thirst. She goes to the gods so the child may live. Another account told of how some mothers begged to be taken. Others clung to their sons, screaming, wailing. And some stayed quiet the whole way up, whispering lullabies as if comforting the child they were losing, not the other way around. One page stopped Kenta cold, a tale from a forgotten village near Chichibu. The last Ubasute was not buried. She cursed the land, said her shrine would hold her sorrow, said no one who lived on it would sleep again, that they would see her face in the water, hear her cry through wood and stone. Kenta placed his hand on the page, felt the paper pulse beneath his palm. Later that night, he returned to the old woman in 703. He knocked 3 times, waited. She opened the door just enough to see his face. She was left behind, he said. The old woman closed her eyes. You've read it. Kenta nodded. She wasn't a witch. She wasn't dangerous. She was abandoned. A pause. She was an Ubasute. The old woman opened the door wider. For the first time he saw her apartment. No TV, no mirrors. A small altar by the window, clean and simple. She gestured for him to sit. She poured him tea that smelled of roasted barley and silence. Her name was Sachiko. She cared for orphans, the sick, the unwanted. But when the developers came, they ignored her, called her a squatter, told the city she had no family, that she was mad. She died before they could force her out. In her sleep? The woman shook her head. No. She climbed to the roof, bowed to the north, lit incense, and threw herself down the elevator shaft. Kenta's blood chilled. That's why the elevator is cursed. No, she said gently. The elevator is not cursed. It is a doorway. She built it, between the world of the living and the left behind. That night, Kenta lit incense again. But this time, he placed a slip of paper beside the flame. On it, he wrote one thing. I remember you, Sachiko. He folded it 3 times, burned it to ash, let it drift through the open window. And at exactly 11:11, something changed. The elevator did not ding. The mirror did not whisper. But from inside the apartment, the old lullaby returned. Fainter, softer, less angry, more sad. He sat and listened and wept.
Kenta didn't go home for 2 days. He told himself it was for clarity, to clear his head, to feel normal again. But the truth clung to him like damp cloth. He was afraid. Afraid that even though he'd learned her name, even though he'd remembered her story, it wasn't enough. That maybe remembering her didn't free her. Maybe it just opened the door wider. He checked into a capsule hotel near Shinjuku. Clean, bright, no mirrors in the pod. He lay on the stiff mattress, eyes open, counting each breath like a child avoiding sleep. The lights overhead were soft and warm, like the inside of a womb, synthetic peace. But peace can be deceiving, because at 11:11 p.m., the light inside his pod flickered. Once, twice, then held steady. He sat up, looked around. Nothing. Only the soft breathing of strangers in their capsules. But when he turned to the plastic sliding door, there was a fingerprint, pressed from the inside. He didn't sleep. Again. In the morning, he left without checking out, didn't take the refund. He just ran. Through Shinjuku Station, down alleys, into streets that bled into each other like a dream. By 2 p.m., he was back in Toshima, back in front of his building. Room 705 waited. He hadn't planned to return, but she had followed him. He knew that now. She wasn't tied to the elevator. She wasn't even tied to the building. She was tied to him. Inside the apartment, everything was still. Too still. No mirrors now. He had covered or smashed them all, but he still felt watched. He opened the closet. Nothing. Checked under the futon. Nothing. Then, the bathroom. He stepped inside slowly. No reflection. But on the glass above the sink, someone had written, "Where did you go?" The letters were drawn in water, not fog. Fresh. Dripping. He backed out of the room, turned, stopped. Because in the center of the apartment, in the space where he had once tried to build a shrine, stood the statue. The one from the fridge. But this time it was broken, split down the middle.
Inside, packed into the hollow chest of the figure, were human teeth, small, like a child's. He dropped it, didn't scream, just stood there, trembling. And then he heard it. From the hallway outside, ding! The elevator. But no one had pressed the button. He stepped into the hall. It was empty. The elevator doors were open. Inside, no lights. But the mirror was back, pristine, welcoming. He didn't want to go in, but something called him. Not a voice, not a whisper, just gravity. He stepped inside, pressed no button. The doors closed. The panel blinked. Ding! Kai 6. This time the hallway was not dark. It was lit, warm, like someone had prepared it. At the end of the corridor stood a small table. On it, a bowl of rice, 2 sticks of incense, a folded note. He stepped forward slowly, read the note. You saw me. You spoke. You know my name, but you still left me. He turned, and she was there, behind him, closer than ever. But something was different. She wasn't rotting now. She wasn't monstrous. She looked almost human, tired, thin, eyes hollow, but alive. And in her hands, a mirror, small, framed in black wood, cracked at the corners. She held it out to him, offering. He hesitated, then took it. The second he did, the lights went out. The hallway vanished, and he was back in the elevator, alone, except for the mirror in his hands, and a new word etched across its face. Mine. That night, back in room 705, Kenta tried to record himself. He set up his phone to film the entire room, lights on, candle lit, mirror hidden. He sat in the center, didn't move. At 11:11 p.m., the air shifted. The flame dimmed. His ears rang, but nothing moved. Nothing that he could see. In the morning, he played back the footage. The room was silent, still, until 11:11. Then the camera glitched, pixelated, and for 4 minutes the screen turned upside down. There was no sound, only static, and at the end of the clip, his own voice whispered as if from far away, "She followed me home." Kenta woke to the sound of scratching. Not loud, not frantic, just consistent, soft, measured, like someone running their nails gently across paper. It was coming from the wall beside his bed, not from the other side, inside the wall. He didn't check. He didn't want to know. By 9 a.m., he was at the leasing office, hair unwashed, eyes hollow, skin the color of concrete. The receptionist blinked at him as he slid the moving notice across the counter. "Immediate termination," he said. She looked confused. "There's still 3 months. Keep the deposit. Just end it." "Sir, I'm not staying another day." There was a silence, the kind reserved for people on the edge of something irreversible. Then she nodded, stamped the form. "You'll have to drop off the key yourself." "I know." Back at room 705, Kenta began to pack. He didn't own much anymore, just his laptop, 2 pairs of jeans, a handful of shirts, The book on Ubastute, still open on the page about curses passed through memory. He didn't touch the mirror, or the closet, or the sink. He wrapped everything in silence, taped the boxes like a ritual, and by sunset, he was ready. He stood at the door, hand on the knob, bag slung over his shoulder. One last look. The room was empty, quiet, but the kind of quiet that watches you leave. He stepped out, locked the door, slipped the key into his pocket. He did not look back. The elevator was waiting, its doors already open. The mirror gone again, just blank metal, no buttons lit. He stepped in, pressed G. The panel slid shut. Nothing happened. Then, the panel blinked. Loku. Day 6. Kenta's breath hitched. No! He reached for the emergency button. It didn't work. Tried to pry the doors open. They wouldn't budge. Then, slowly, the elevator began to descend. Not to the lobby, but below, lower than he thought possible. The panel blinked again. Chica, -1. Basement? He hadn't even known the building had one. Ding! The doors opened. The hallway beyond was unfinished. Raw concrete, exposed pipes, no lights. He stepped out, not because he wanted to, but because the elevator refused to move. A single bulb flickered ahead. He followed it, turned a corner, and stopped. There, in the center of the hallway, stood a mailbox. His, numbered 705, attached to nothing, freestanding, a line. Inside, one envelope. He opened it. Inside, one slip of paper. I won't ride alone anymore. He turned. The hallway had changed. Now it was narrow, walls closing in, and at the far end, the elevator, open, waiting, but not empty. In the reflection, he saw her standing inside, looking at him. But when he moved toward her, she turned away, back upstairs. Kenta sat on the floor of room 705. He didn't know how he got back. The boxes were untouched. The clock read 11:09 p.m. 2 minutes. He picked up his phone, typed out a message to no one in particular. I'm leaving tomorrow. I just need one more night. Please. He never hit send, because at 11:11, the lights flickered, the air shifted, and the door to his apartment unlocked itself with a soft click. He didn't check. He knew what was on the other side. She was no longer bound to the elevator, no longer bound to 6th day. She was in the walls now, the vents, the silence. She had followed him into his sleep, his breath, his thoughts, and now she would follow him wherever he went. Because once you look in the mirror, once you break the rule, you carry her with you. The next morning, Kenta returned the key. The manager smiled politely, stamped the form. All done. Have a safe move. He nodded, stepped outside. The city was loud again, but it didn't reach him,
because when he opened his bag to check his phone, the small black mirror was there, wrapped in cloth, unbroken. He hadn't packed it. He hadn't brought it. But it had come anyway. He closed the bag, didn't say a word, and walked away.
The sky over Tokyo was gray when Kenta came back. Not stormy, not dramatic, just gray. A flat, silent sky, the kind that holds its breath. He stood across the street from his old building, watching the windows of room 705. The curtains were still drawn, the balcony still empty. Someone else would live there soon. Someone who wouldn't know. Someone who'd hear footsteps and blame the pipes, who'd see shadows and blame the lighting. Unless she chose to be seen again. Kenta hadn't planned to return, but the mirror had changed that. It followed him, stayed in his bag, refused to be thrown away. He had tried, dropped it into a donation bin in Shibuya. An hour later, it was sitting on the seat beside him on the train, wrapped in the same cloth, unmarked, waiting. So he came back. One last ride. One last apology. One final descent. The lobby was empty. The walls smelled of dust and old rain. He walked past the mailboxes, past the vending machine humming like it always had, stopped in front of the elevator. Its doors were closed. The paddle read G. He pressed the button. Ding! The doors opened, and there she was, in the mirror, already waiting. He stepped in, pressed nothing. The doors closed. The panel blinked. Kai 6. No hesitation this time. No flickering. No choice. Just inevitability. The doors opened slowly, like a breath held too long. The hallway was different now. Longer, wider, clean. No peeling wallpaper, no mildew. It looked like a hospital or a temple, lit by lanterns. Quiet, sacred. At the far end stood a single sliding door, wooden, ornate, framed by paper charms and faded talismans. He walked toward it. His footsteps didn't echo. They were swallowed by the silence. The door slid open on its own. Inside, a small room. Tatami, an incense burner, a futon, a cracked mirror propped against the wall. And her, Sachiko. Not decayed, not twisted. She sat with her legs folded beneath her, hands on her knees, back straight, waiting. Her eyes were open, human, wounded. Kenta knelt across from her. The air was warm, still. He placed the small black mirror between them. She didn't speak, neither did he. Instead, he bowed, once, deeply, held the pose, and whispered, "I'm sorry I tried to leave you." The mirror shimmered faintly, and for the first time, she smiled. It was a sad smile, but it was enough. The room began to fade, not violently, not like a glitch, more like mist rising from water. The walls disappeared, then the floor,
then the light, until there was only her and him, and then just the mirror, lying on the elevator floor. The panel blinked. 7. Ding! The doors opened. Empty. Later that day, the building manager reviewed the CCTV footage. He had received a call from someone reporting screams on the 7th floor, but there had been no tenants there that week. He scrolled back through the elevator logs, paused. At 11:11 a.m., the elevator had risen on its own. No one had pressed a button. The camera caught it stopping on floor 7. The doors opened, then closed. But in the reflection of the elevator mirror, there were 2 people. One standing, one kneeling. Only one had a face. The next day, a new tenant moved in to room 705. She was young, polite, moved her things in alone. At 11:07 p.m., she took the elevator up after a late trip to the conveni. By 11:10, she had not arrived. At 11:11, the elevator stopped at 6-. She never came home.
The building manager didn't believe in ghosts. He believed in contracts, maintenance, noise complaints, rent. He believed in things he could touch, things he could file, things with dates and signatures. But even so, when the girl from room 705 didn't return, he felt something cold pass over him. Like guilt. But for what? He didn't know. She had signed her lease only 3 days prior. A student, she said. Quiet. Respectful. He gave her the same warnings he gave everyone. Don't prop open the fire doors. Don't leave trash on the balcony. Don't press the elevator emergency button unless it's an actual emergency. She nodded, smiled, moved in alone. No questions asked. That night, when she vanished, it was just after 11 p.m. The security guard, a part-timer in his 60s, reported hearing the elevator operate on its own. No calls placed, no buttons lit. He thought it was just a glitch. Old building, old wires. But then, no one saw the girl again. No police report was filed. Not yet. But something felt off. So the manager reviewed the cameras. The footage began normally. At 11:07 p.m., she entered the lobby, plastic bag from the conveni in one hand, phone in the other. She pressed the elevator button, waited, stepped in. She looked tired but calm, normal. The doors closed. The elevator began to rise. But then, at 11:11, the elevator stopped. The display showed Chi 6 for exactly 12 seconds. Then, blank. Then, 7. The doors opened. The elevator was empty. He rewound, slowed the footage, frame by frame. Nothing. No tampering, no edit. But then, the mirror. That damn mirror. As the elevator doors opened on floor 7, the reflection in the mirror showed 2 people. The girl, standing in the center of the elevator, and someone else, behind her, tall, draped in what looked like wet cloth. No face, just a shape, and one arm, reaching. The manager paused the frame, zoomed in. He leaned closer, and what he saw was impossible. In the reflection, the girl wasn't facing the camera. She was facing the mirror, mouth open, screaming. But in the real footage, her back was to the mirror, still, silent, frozen, as if the reflection told a truer story than the one he saw. He saved the footage, tried to copy it to a USB, but the file corrupted twice. The third time, it vanished from the system altogether. Gone. Later, when he tried to pull archived clips from earlier in that month, from when the previous tenant had lived there, he discovered something worse. There were no records, no elevator logs, no hallway footage, no move-out file, no forwarding address. The name on the lease, Matsuda Kenta, was not in their system. The signature line was blank. He checked the old paper leases in the filing cabinet. Room 705's folder was missing. Not misfiled. Gone. Just like the girl. Just like the man before her. He told no one. Filed nothing. But the next morning, he removed the elevator mirror himself. He didn't tell maintenance, didn't log the request. He took a crowbar and unbolted it while the building was still asleep, carried the mirror to the basement, smashed it with a hammer, wrapped the shards in cloth, double-bagged them, and dropped them in a construction bin 3 blocks away. He didn't sleep that night, because at 11:11 the building's power surged. The elevator lights blinked, and from the hallway outside his office, he heard the soft ding of the elevator, opening on its own. When he reviewed the cameras the next morning, there was no footage between 11:10 and 11:12, just static, and a still frame caught just before the glitch, the elevator mirror. Reinstalled. Flawless. And in the reflection, 2 people. Only one of them had a face.
The new tenant never asked about the elevator. Her name was Emmy, 26, freelancer, graphic designer. She liked quiet places, older buildings, low rent. The ad for room 705 had gone up overnight. No photos, just the words, "Available immediately, move-in ready." She answered within minutes. The building was old, but charming in that weathered Tokyo way, the kind of place that felt like it had memories, even if you didn't know whose. Emmy moved in on a Thursday. 2 suitcases, a box of books, her cat, Nobi. Room 705 smelled faintly of incense. The walls had been freshly painted, but the tatami creaked when she walked across it, and one corner near the bathroom was warm to the touch, even when the AC was off. That night she unpacked, lit a candle, fed the cat, set up her laptop. At exactly 11:11 p.m., Nobi began to hiss at the bathroom door. Emmy laughed, told him to relax. Cats always see things we don't. On the second night, the elevator stopped on her floor without being called. She stepped out of her room just in time to see the doors close again. No one inside. Or so she thought. She asked the landlord if the building had quirks. He smiled politely. "Old places breathe. Don't worry too much about the noises."
He handed her the trash schedule and a list of emergency contacts. No mention of Kenta, no mention of the girl who never returned, no mention of 6. Just blank forms and practiced smiles. On her 3rd night, she stayed up late, finishing a deadline. The clock ticked past 11, and the hallway outside her door grew cold. Nobi refused to come out from under the futon. When she stood to stretch, she noticed the mirror above the bathroom sink had fogged, even though she hadn't run the shower. She wiped it with her hand and saw herself and someone behind her. She turned. No one. Looked back. Gone. Just her reflection and the faint outline of a handprint where she had touched the glass. She tried to laugh it off. Old plumbing, old glass, old fears. But the next night, the elevator called itself again. This time, she got in, pressed floor 7, but the panel blinked. 6. She stepped out and vanished. In the CCTV footage, the elevator rides alone, or so it seems, because in the mirror, caught in one still frame, there are 2 people, one with a face, one without. The elevator never malfunctions. It passes inspections. It serves the building well. It opens when called, closes when dismissed. But every now and then, always around 11:11, it stops on a floor that doesn't exist. And when it does, it rides with someone who's alone. No one speaks of room 705 now, not out loud. It fills. It empties. The names change. But the mirror always returns. The hallway always waits. And the elevator still dings. If you find yourself in an aging apartment in Tokyo, if the elevator doors open without being pressed, if the display reads something unfamiliar, if the lights flicker at exactly 11:11 p.m., don't speak, don't turn, and whatever you do, don't look into the mirror, because she's still riding, waiting, watching, and some reflections are just looking for company.